welcome to Strangest Species, episode 4. Once again, I'm your host, Mike Davis, here with my lovely wife, Ethne Davis. How you doing tonight, babe?
Good. Really good.
All right. It's a ringing endorsement on the evening.
It's just been a lot going on.
Yeah,
Just
this
busy.
is true.
Yeah, but good.
It's almost 4th of July. I think this episode will actually come out on the 4th of July. And on the 5th of July, we're heading to Canada. So we have a lot of packing, a lot of things going on.
A lot of celebrations all kind of clumped together.
This is true. But here we are. So good. Well, I guess let's jump right into it then.
Let's do it.
Today we are going back to the lovely Isle of Japan.
All right.
Yeah, actually, we're not going back to Japan. We're going to go to the Philippines.
Oh, okay.
But talk about a Japanese guy on the Philippines or in the Philippines.
More like in the Philippines, I feel like.
On an island in the nation of the Philippines.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to talk today about a gentleman by the name of Heroo Onoda.
Heroo
Onoda. I think you have to say it like that.
Yes. I feel like you must.
Yeah. So, Mr. Onoda, we're going all the way back into World War II. And he was a Japanese, well, he was a guy. I don't know what he was doing. I think he was 22, 23. And he got drafted into the Japanese army, into the Imperial Army during World War II. And he went and got trained as an officer and spent 2 years in training, learning all about guerrilla warfare and what his future missions would be that would require that. But his training, so he went to a school. Obviously, I know nothing about World War II Japanese military schools, but he went to the Nakano Military School. But his training was unique in the fact that most Japanese soldiers, or at least officers, were taught something called the Senjikun Battlefield Code Instructions. I don't know if I said that right.
Battlefield Code Instructions?
Code Instructions, yeah. Senjinkun. I don't know where the accent's supposed to be in Japanese words.
Senjinkun?
Senjinkun.
I don't know if there's really accents in Japanese or not. You just pronounce every syllable. Anyway, it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
That's not why we're here.
No, that would be a very, very boring podcast. Unless you're trying to learn Japanese.
Yeah, then it would be great.
That'd be great. But I am not. So the Senjinkun Code of Instructions is the one you see oftentimes in movies where they were never supposed to be caught in battle. They should either die in battle or essentially commit suicide before they were caught in battle. Like death was the only option.
Okay.
But his was unique in the fact that with his mission that he was going to have, he was actually under the orders of the exact opposite. Under no circumstance whatsoever was he allowed to take his own life.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in 1944, he was sent to a small island of about 50 square miles. Or maybe kilometers. Oh, man, I don't remember now.
Well, they're very metric over there.
Yeah.
So I would imagine.
50 square somethings.
I'm pretty sure it's kilometers. They do everything there, like weight, height, everything metric. And Canada still, because I think we are neighbors with the U.S., we're very like both. We kind of understand and do both. So
here in the States, we do whatever we want, man.
You guys are the only ones. Yeah. So that's not great.
Well, there was a small island regardless of what it was.
Okay.
And so in 1944, he was sent there with a couple assignments. Assignment number 1, him and his unit were supposed to destroy the airfield on Lubang.
Is this airfield, are they on the opposite team? I mean, I don't know anything about the Philippines being involved, but obviously I'm assuming they were on
I don't know if the Philippines had anything to do with it, honestly.
Yeah, so why was he there to...
Well, because the Allied forces were used these islands.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah,
so they were used by the opposite team.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they needed to destroy this airfield. And a second mission to destroy a pier that was in the harbor, and then kill any Americans that showed up. Destroy their planes, kill them, don't let them be there.
Cool.
1944.
All right.
So he gets there, and he gets, on top of that, he has another, so that's his assignment number 1, do those things, take your men, do those things. But he was told very specifically from his commanding officer, it might take 3 years, it might take 5 years, but eventually we're going to come back for you. And until we come back for you, you stay here, you fight this guerrilla war, and you do not kill yourself.
I feel like this is just quite the mission.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's what he does. Well, he tries to do this. So this is 1944 again. In February 1945, the Allied forces overtake the island. So they land, they take it over. They fail, obviously, to destroy the airfield or the pier in the harbor. And so now they're being chased down by Allied forces. And they're, some are surrendering and some are running all over, and it's just absolute chaos. And so he escapes into the jungle with 3 other soldiers.
All right.
And lots of little groups escape into the jungle. But over time, either they get shot and killed by the Allied forces or they surrender. And so there's just these 4 Japanese soldiers in the jungle on this small little island in February 1945. Now, on August 15th, 1945, do you know what happens with World War II?
Something significant, but I'm not really good with
happens. Sorry, not fair. I'm just throwing things out at you. So that's the end of the war. Japan surrenders.
Okay. So the time frame from them escaping into the jungle to the
end of the war.
Yes, is
February to August.
Okay, so thank you
February,
for
March, April, May, June, July.
Yeah.
6 months or so. So they've been out in the jungle for 6 months, living off the land, still fighting the Americans as best as they can.
I feel like at that point you just sort of stay alive and stop fighting because there's 4 of you and whoever knows how many of them.
Well, that's the beauty of guerrilla warfare.
I mean, I guess so, but okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, they got a mission.
Yeah.
Their mission's to wreak havoc and fight, and that's what they're doing.
Okay. All right.
So the war ends, but this is 1945, and they don't have cell phones, and they don't have any way of knowing the war ended.
Oh my gosh.
So what do you think happens?
Oh, they're probably still out there, probably still fighting, thinking they're doing all sorts of awesome things, and nobody comes against them. And then they are probably, in my guess, which I have no idea, forgotten.
Well, let's find out. So they're out there fighting, and they're not entirely forgotten. So no Japanese commanding officer ever comes back for them, but they drop a bunch of leaflets on the island. And they probably do this all over the Pacific theater. Because there's Japanese soldiers spread out all over.
What are leaflets?
So they literally drop like pamphlets, like pieces of paper.
Oh.
Like they'll fly over and just dump thousands of pages onto the islands saying, the war's ended, we've surrendered.
Oh, like leaflets of surrender. Okay,
yeah, perfect. You can come out now. The war's done,
It's a weird way of doing it, but I guess I have to picture what it's like in 1945. Like, what other options do they have? So
in the Philippine jungles.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And so they drop these leaflets, but what do you think Heroo
Onoda.
Onoda.
It's the same name as the kid in the Puffy Marshmallow Man.
Big Hero 6.
Big Hero 6.
I like Puffy Marshmallow Man.
Well,
First thought was Ghostbusters.
I couldn't think of the name of the movie.
I don't remember that hero in Ghostbusters.
Hero, yeah. Anyway.
Sweet. So, what do you think they do when they see these leaflets?
I mean, maybe they think they're fake.
Exactly what they think.
This is what I was guessing.
They just think they're propaganda.
Oh, gosh.
That the Americans are trying to get them to come out of hiding.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
And so, what would you do if you thought it was propaganda?
I mean, I'm trying to put myself legitimately in his shoes. I mean, he speaks a different language than them, right? Like, I don't know. I think I would want to clarify and confirm that this is true or not. Like almost like the white flag surrender. Like, hey, I just want to ask you a question.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's how it worked on the ground.
Well, that's what I'm saying is, but this is like what I would want to do. Right. I would want to know for sure if this is true or not.
Yeah.
But that's maybe my brain thinking of things now and not being like a soldier.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
I want to know too. Obviously, everything anyone would want to know. The problem is back then.
How do you know?
I mean, yeah, there's no way to get information, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think today we take for granted how much information there is.
Right.
All
and
the
how
time.
easy and accessible it is for sure.
So they just totally ignored him, thinking like, yeah, this isn't real.
Okay.
And so then more leaflets were dropped. This time with actual surrender orders from the Japanese.
Okay.
Saying like, no, like for reals, it's over. We are ordering you to surrender. But they thought those were fake too.
Oh gosh.
Which kind of makes sense. But if you think about it, so again, it's always hindsight's 2020, and it's so easy to look at history and be like, well, obviously that makes so much sense, or why, or it doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't people? But I think of these guys, they're part of Imperial Japan. For the most part, they're taught not to surrender. Right? I mean, under any circumstance, you're going down fighting. That's the mindset for this entire army.
And they are incredible.
Right. And
with that
the
mindset.
Discipline. And we're going to get into all of that here in a little
amazing. Bit. Mm-hmm.
You were just put on this island. And when you got put on this island, there was no sign that you were about ready to surrender. It's not like you're a German in Berlin with the Russians coming in and like, okay, the end's coming.
Well, but the thing is, I mean, they fled 6 months earlier, but how long had they already been on there before the Allied forces had taken over the island? I don't remember.
Not long, less than a year.
Less than a year. Okay. So around a year-ish they've been there.
Right. So, yeah. But even not talking about just their specific assignment, the greater war, there was no, thoughts of, oh man, we're really losing this. Like, we're probably going to be giving up here soon.
Right.
They were in the thick of it. Then all of a sudden, they're getting these pamphlets saying, "Oh, we've surrendered," and you're just like, "Well, we weren't ready to surrender 8 months ago. Like, why are we surrendering now?"
I guess I kind of wonder: did they see the planes drop the leaflets? I mean, I'm picturing like a big loud plane, and I'm picturing stuff you see it falling from the sky.
Yeah, I mean, those planes are super loud back in the day.
I don't know, but he really just didn't believe it. I guess.
Well, I think the big thing though. And the hindsight 2020 thing is they had no concept of the nuclear bomb. They had no, I mean, you've never seen this before in history.
Right.
You don't know that it's been dropped on your country. You don't know the devastation it's created.
Right.
That's made this sudden twist in
surrender. And the reason why, like, he probably got these leaflets thinking, I can't fathom that Japan would surrender. I get that. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. But now for us, it's easy to look back and say like, well, I mean, the war was over, obviously.
I mean, at that point, yeah.
But they have no way of conceptualizing what has happened back on their home island.
Right. There's no way to communicate any of that stuff. So I guess that makes sense. Okay.
So anyways, they kept not believing him. That's how they stayed for 4 years.
Oh, my goodness. 4 more years or 4 years total?
4 years. I don't know. Either way, 4 years. They're out there for 4 years.
That's a long time.
These 4 guys.
There must be a lot of fruit. There must be a lot of like.
Well, it's a jungle,
right?
So
I don't know anything about like
it is
Philippine food, but yeah,
rich in
lots of different things,
stuff to eat.
Yeah.
I read an article that says they ate a lot of bananas.
Makes sense.
And banana skins,
gross.
Which I didn't know you could eat.
I can't imagine they're. Yeah. Okay.
And coconuts.
Yeah.
And they would steal rice from local villages.
They're stealing rice from the people that live there.
Well, we're going to get to the people that live there.
Okay,
down
perfect.
The story.
All right.
But they were convinced that the enemy was trying to starve them to death, starve them out. Like that was their tactic.
But I mean, had the Allied forces, once Japan surrendered, just like left?
Yeah. I mean, Maybe not like the day, but yeah.
Right. But I mean, if they're there for 4 years, the Allied forces would have been
gone.
Done, right?
Yeah.
Like,
so the only people they're running into now are local Filipinos.
So at this point, why don't they think, that's strange. There's only local Filipinos here.
Because they think these are all spies. This is all part of...
I wonder if they were going a little cuckoo.
Well, probably.
Like,
they were definitely getting extremely paranoid.
Yeah.
Which actually is a good segue.
Okay.
So in 1949.
Okay, and this
they got the island
45.
in 44.
Oh, 44. Okay.
They got, ambushed or whatever in 45. They flee to the jungle in 45.
Okay.
So 1949, one of the three of them sneaks off and leaves.
There's 4, no?
Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
I always in my brain think there's Heroo and then the 3 subordinates.
Yeah.
So there are 4 total. When I say one of the 3, I mean one of the 3
subordinates.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Junior officers or
not
enlisted or whatever.
Gotcha.
Guys under his command.
All right.
Sneaks off and surrenders, leaving just 3 of them.
Okay.
But after this happens, they become even more paranoid. Like, oh, now we can't. Can we trust each other? Can we not trust each other? You know, because imagine like living with the same couple people in the jungle for 4 years.
Right. So, but if the other man surrendered to the local, I mean, at this point, this is so many years later, do the Filipino even know like what this man is surrendering?
We're going to get there.
Oh, okay.
They most definitely know who these guys are.
Okay, they do.
Yes.
Okay, this is so weird. All right. Okay.
So that's in 1949. In 1952, now 7 years into hiding, Japan still knows they're there.
Do they know that they're alive?
Or assume they're dead. One or the other.
One or the other.
But I think they're probably getting reports from the local Filipino authorities that they're still out there.
Okay.
So they decide to drop photos of their families and their hometowns and stuff to try to convince them to come out.
Okay.
But for Heroo, especially or specifically, his whole entire town was bombed and destroyed. And so all these photos are of a rebuilt town. So he doesn't believe they're real. Because he doesn't, I mean, he can tell, like, well, this isn't what it's supposed to look like.
Or this is what it didn't look like when I left.
Yeah. Right. So he thinks they're all doctored propaganda photos dropped to convince him to come out of hiding and surrender when the war is still going on.
This poor guy. He's committed.
He's very committed. And it's just interesting. It makes me think of, have you ever looked at one of your old houses on like Google Earth?
Yes.
And in your brain, you totally know what it looks like.
Yes.
And then you look at it. So this happened to me once. So as a kid, kindergarten through 5th grade, I lived in San Antonio, Texas. I lived on Comanche Pass, Converse, Texas. I have so many memories of that street, of that house, of everything around it. A couple years ago, I went on Google Earth. This is about like 30 years later. I could not find my house. Like, it looked nothing like...
Well, the trees were
bigger. Things had been painted. Everything was really, like, crummy compared to what I remember.
Right.
Maybe we lived in not a great neighborhood. Maybe it's gone way downhill since then. But I couldn't find my house.
Right. That makes sense. I mean, that makes sense to me.
But I still recognized, like, the general area.
Right.
It was very dreamlike. It was very ethereal. It was very... strange. Like, it just didn't feel right. And I assume that's kind of similar to what he was experiencing.
I'm sure.
Yeah, that's the park downtown, but that's not down, or whatever it was. Because it was completely different.
Right.
So I feel for the guy. But at the same time, I guess I feel for the guy. Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
It is kind of crazy.
So then there's 7 years. So that was in... Sorry, go ahead.
I guess I have more questions. Like, why don't the Japanese authorities, instead of just dropping them, literally land there and just say, hey, guys, like in their own native tongue? I mean, obviously in the Philippines, they speak another foreign language as well. And just say, hey, guys, like, this is for real. You need to come out now.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know why they never went. I mean, they were in hiding up in the mountains. It wasn't like people knew
exactly where they were.
Right. They just know they're somewhere out in the jungle.
I know.
And they
I
show
just
up
feel
from
like
time to time.
smoke signals or something back in the day. There's got to be a way to be like, come out of hiding. I don't know. Maybe not. I mean, maybe they didn't think that far ahead. I just, it's hard to picture what this would be like and to communicate. But I'm like, how?
So it's also, this was a larger problem, and it probably happens, maybe not nowadays with modern war, but it probably happened a lot in the past where the war would end and you kind of just stay where you were. And it happened a lot with the Japanese. A lot of them would integrate with the local populations. They'd met a woman there, and they just settle down or whatever there, and they never come home. The difference with Heroo was he was still actively fighting, like still actively thought, I'm still in a war here.
Like, was he doing bad things to the Filipino people?
Yeah, we'll get there.
Okay.
So yes, there is.
Like, he's still fighting them.
He is still full on.
Okay.
Guerrilla warfaring.
So these people are kind of afraid of him. Like, they don't like him. They want him to leave or be.
Excuse me.
Or realize that, like.
I think I swallowed a June bug.
Maybe.
Just kidding.
June bugs are big, and there wasn't any.
I did see one of those ones in the backyard today with the big eyelashes.
Yeah, that's a June bug.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
I don't know. It sounded like a bird trying to get into our house.
Yeah.
This thing's
I love
like
those
4
ones.
inches long.
I know, and our chickens would love them.
They
anyway.
would love it.
So yeah, he would be a threat to the local people. Like, they would be kind of scared of him.
Yeah.
So I can see them wanting him to leave. Okay.
So then we're now in the early 1950s.
Okay.
The Korean War's broken out.
Oh, yeah. I don't
And
know
what
how that
happens-
affects the Philippines, but
Well,
yeah.
I don't know exactly how it affects it, other than the fact that we have more fighter planes flying overhead, which just tells him even more. Oh, see, there's still planes flying overhead. We're still at war.
This guy.
These fools are trying to get me to surrender, and I can see it right there.
There's more?
There's more, man.
Okay. Yep.
I'm going in. So he doubles down.
This guy is diehard.
Yeah, it is. So they would, like you said, occasionally run into search parties or locals dressed in civilian clothing, but they would just assume they were spies being sent in to get them. And this whole time, they're still wearing their Imperial Japanese uniforms. I mean, we're going almost a decade here wearing.
They sincerely thought this went on for over a decade. I mean, anyway,
Yeah.
okay. Yep.
So sometimes they would open fire at the civilians and get in skirmishes with them. So in 1953, so there's Heroo and 2 other soldiers left at this point. One of the other soldiers gets shot in the leg in a skirmish with local authorities. Heroo rescues him, drags him back into the jungle. And I guess saves him.
Life.
Again, this sounds like a terrible existence, being shot in the leg and then going back to your
Jungle.
banana peels for dinner in the jungle lifestyle.
I wonder if he had to have his leg amputated or.
I can't imagine you would survive that. An amputation with coconut husks in the jungle.
Well, they've got to have like equipment. I mean, how are they doing guerrilla warfare if they have nothing?
That's a good point. They've obviously got some cash.
Something.
Or they're stealing stuff.
I mean, I don't know. Okay. Anyway.
So that happens. But then the next year, 1954.
So 10 years.
Almost 10 years.
Almost.
That same soldier shoots at a search party, and they shoot back and they kill him.
Wait, the same guy that got shot in the leg?
Yep.
Okay, well, I mean, he's still fighting, and he died fighting.
Someone searching for them, I guess.
Okay.
So then there were only 2. Heroo Onoda and his buddy Kinshishi Kozuka.
How do you spell it?
Which one?
Kashiki?
Kinshichi. Kinshichi.
Kenshichi.
Kinshichi.
Yeah, Kenshichi. Okay.
Kozuka.
Yeah. Kenshichi's good enough.
That's way harder.
Okay. Kozuka-chan.
Kazuka-chan. Yeah. So there's just the two of them left. And it's 9 years after the war. And what do you think they did?
Still kept fighting?
Dang straight. They kept up their mission to sabotage, disrupt, and destroy. Guerrilla warfare style.
All right.
The problem was there was only Filipino citizens left.
Oh my gosh, this is terrible. Don't you think they would get so, like, I guess for me, I'm like, okay, you know that the Filipino people are not the enemy. They're just...
And they're not in uniform.
Right. And they're just there. And if you were to observe them, you would realize they really are just civilians.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're sneaky enough, I guess, I don't know. So then you're like, okay, I haven't seen Allied forces in a long time. Like, at what point do you question?
Well, the two of them go on for a little bit longer.
Okay.
18 more years.
From the time that you just said?
Yep.
What?
Till 1972.
They're guerrilla warfaring the people of the Philippines?
Yes.
For how many years is that total? 18 plus, what were we at? A decade?
Yeah,
30,
18 plus 9.
No, wait, 28 years?
27 years at this point.
Are you kidding me?
Wearing the same clothes.
Oh my gosh. No, they have to be pilfering at this point. They have to be stealing stuff from them.
One pair of underwear. The whole time.
You are full of it.
I don't know what they're doing.
They have to be.
Yeah, one would assume.
Oh my gosh, I feel like they're kind of mentally unstable.
Well, I've
they
seen
went
Lost.
crazy.
Yeah.
Like they really did go cray.
Like we've watched a couple seasons of that show alone. And in like 6 weeks of those people by themselves.
Yeah, they
in the
do
wilderness,
kind of
they're insane.
Yeah, it's true. That is totally what happened.
Like they're starved. They're insane.
Yeah.
They're just, at least they have each other, but still.
Yeah. Okay. They both keep doing this for, 28 years. All right.
Yeah, until 1972. For some reason, part of your guerrilla warfare tactic, Kazuka was burning a rice field. Because that's what you do. Then he gets shot and killed.
Oh my gosh. So Hiro's by himself now.
Hiro's by himself. Lone man.
Why is he burning the rice field?
I don't know. Sabotaging the enemy. I guess.
Okay. This just seems like not real.
So that's 1972.
Yeah, I don't even want to
27
know
years?
how long Hiro keeps going. Okay.
So he's by himself.
Now he's by himself. Yep.
1974.
So 2 more years.
2 years later, 29 years later, there's this eccentric Japanese explorer named Norio Suzuki. That one was easier.
Norio? Okay.
Suzuki.
Yeah, Suzuki's it's
car.
like, but Suzuki's last name is like Davis or Johnson.
Smith.
Yes, super
I had a
common.
Suzuki Swift when I was in high school. I'm 6'4". It was awesome.
It's like a clown car.
It was little.
Okay.
Had pretty good legroom up front, though. You'd be surprised.
With the chair all the way back.
Little 5-wheel, definitely.
Okay.
Little hatchback. So he finds Onoda. He's out actually looking for him.
Okay.
He finds
Mr.
him.
Suzuki.
I guess because he's Japanese, he doesn't kill him.
Well, obviously they can speak to each other.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, buddy.
So he finds him and he tells him, hey, dude, the war's over.
Like 30 years ago.
30 years ago.
It's not quite that long, but yeah.
Like when you got that first email from
That
the
was
sky.
real.
Yeah. But he doesn't really still believe him. And so Suzuki comes up with this really ingenious plan. He says, okay, if I go back to Japan and I get your original commanding officer who told you that he would come back for you, and he comes and he tells you the war's over, will you believe him? And he says, yeah, if you can get him to come tell me, then I'll surrender.
Oh, great. Here's my brain. I'm thinking this man's going to come back, but because it's been so long, he's not going to recognize him. And so he's not going to believe that it's the right guy. But anyway, please tell your story. Am I right?
So Suzuki goes back.
Okay.
Guy's dead.
Oh, no. His commanding officer's dead. Okay.
And he had just died like 2 days prior.
What?
No, I made that up. He's alive.
Okay. These poor people listening, they can't follow.
Yeah, he's alive. He goes to Lubang He tells him, and he surrenders.
Oh, he does?
Yep.
Okay,
he
good.
He says, hey, this is the guy that told me he was coming back for me.
He recognized him.
Me.
He believed him.
He's like, super old now.
Well, of course. That's why I was thinking like, oh my gosh, this guy's going to think it's not the real same guy.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So 29 years, he surrenders. And when he surrenders, he still had on his original uniform.
Are you kidding me?
Nope.
Oh my gosh.
He turned in his samurai sword, his Japanese rifle. He still had grenades, and he still had his family dagger.
This guy is impressive.
He's super impressive. Which leads my thoughts, as I was kind of reading the story. It's an interesting story because it is impressive. And why is it impressive?
I think the mental fortitude.
Yeah, we don't have that in the West.
No. That mentality is definitely something that Japan...
He talks about it, Onoda did afterwards, and he talks about the power of shame. And in the Japanese culture...
Mm-hmm. It's huge.
Expound on that.
Well, it's hard to explain, but like a term that they say is saving face, but they never want to shame their family or their family name, and they want to just do what they know their family would want or expect. Or what their...
Does it go back ancestrally?
Ancestors would, yeah. Mm-hmm, for sure.
Like when you say shaming your family, you mean like...
Oh, yeah.
Historically, your family.
Yeah. It's...
And I'm not asking that rhetorically. I really don't know. Like,
no, for sure. It is ancestries too. I mean, they do have little shrines in their homes. They, go to places and they bring, offerings and stuff to their ancestors. They're very, very involved with, their family lineage, I guess you could say. But I mean,
it makes sense considering he still had his family dagger.
Right. Like the direct translation and saving face. I don't know if it's the best translation into English. So, but that's kind of how they term it. Like you will do anything to keep that honor.
Like live in the jungle for 30 years doing guerrilla warfare?
I mean, I guess so. Part of me, again, feels like they might not have been fully mentally
I'm sure you are going
there, right? Point. And so, I mean, he didn't do his family dishonor, and he wouldn't have if they were told that they surrendered.
So he stated it like this. He said he was an officer. He had a mission, and if he didn't fulfill that mission, then he'd feel shame. Again, like I said, I can't see anyone in our culture, doing that. Say, oh, I had this order, so I'm just going to keep doing it for 30 years until my direct supervisor tells me it's done, regardless of what that means, This is a quote from Heroo. He said, "Soldiers were supposed to die for the cause. Even if the death penalty was not carried out, a disgraced soldier was so thoroughly ostracized by others that he might as well have died." End quote. And he goes on to talk about there were some 5,000 kamikaze soldiers in World War II, meaning they killed themselves in battle. And he said, he received a very special order not to die. And so already having failed his mission to defend the island and to destroy the airfield, like it was like a double amount of shame. Like I'd already failed my mission you gave me. The other half of that was to not die. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not stopping until.
Right. And maybe that's where his sort of, in my opinion, stubbornness came from a little bit was, okay, well, I failed my first mission, I didn't take down the airfield. We didn't take down the dock or harbor, whatever it was, the port. But I am going to stay alive and I'm going to keep doing guerrilla warfare in whatever capacity, to kind of hold on to that honor. Maybe it was almost like it's the only thing
that kept him going.
Yeah. Maybe that's the only thing that kept him going, or like a proud, maybe proud, but maybe not the right wording, but just something inside of him that was like, I'm going to do this until I know for sure that I'm doing the right thing.
Right. So we're going to get into that a little bit. Was he doing the right thing? Here in a minute.
Okay.
So he surrenders formally. He goes back to Japan. And this is in the mid-70s. Japan was in a big economic
slump.
That's a good word. But he's greeted, gets off the plane to a crowd of 8,000 people.
Wow.
So he's kind of treated like a war hero. And there's probably, I mean, you could really dive deep into the political reasons of why people were kind of using him as a pawn and all that. It doesn't really matter. That's not the important thing of the story. He did have a warm welcome coming back to Japan, but obviously he found it extremely hard to adjust to modern Japan. It's like a time machine.
Oh,
you
totally.
leave Imperial Japan, you come back to this very modern, industrial, friends with the West, Japan.
I can't even imagine the amount of change that would have happened in those 30 years in all of the people, in your culture, in the relationships around the world. And you had been stuck, literally, it's like a time travel.
Yeah.
Like you'd been stuck in the jungle in this, what I'm assuming is a very remote place that probably is stuck in time in and of itself.
Yeah. I don't know what Imperial Japan was like, but modern Japan, literally the friendliest people on the face of the planet.
Yes, they are
Like
very
the nicest.
They're
Do
very
anything
kind.
for you.
Yep.
People.
They're very honest in like dealings with other people. Mm-hmm.
It was funny. Side story here. When Ethne and I went to Japan, we would have to be careful about what we said to each other just in passing, because the people that we were staying with would literally bias things we were talking about. For example, we could be walking down the grocery store and have a simple conversation like, oh, look at the size of that jar of pickles, or something like that. And then the next day, said jar of pickles would be at our house because they thought like, oh, they want these pickles. Let's get them these pickles.
Or
like,
even things we wanted to do. Like if we wanted to go to Osaka's Universal Studios or whatever, then they're like offering to buy you your ticket. And you're like, no. We're just trying to figure out what we want to see and do. Like, I don't want you to. So we just got scared to.
Just don't say anything at all.
Yeah. Talk in front of them. Remember how they came with us to Hiroshima? Was it that we went
They took us to Hiroshima.
Right. But like that wasn't a part of the original plan.
No.
They were debating, and then they all ended up coming.
Like, let's take the bullet train.
And the Shinkansen and all this stuff. And it was like feeling very guilty.
That okonomiyaki down there was really, really good.
It was really good. Yeah. It was delicious.
It was.
But yeah, that is definitely how they are.
Yeah. So you come home to that, at least some version of that. I don't know if it's the exact same in the 70s, but I would assume it's much closer to modern Japan than pre-World War II Japan.
Right. I would assume so, yeah.
And anyway, so he really struggled.
It's like culture shock almost. Yeah, for sure.
So he ended up moving within about a year to Brazil and kind of lived out in the jungle and raised cattle.
I mean, there are a lot of Brazilian Japanese
There's a big connection there.
Yes, big connection there. Like my friend that I met there. I mean, her dad is 100% Japanese, but was born and raised in Brazil, so speaks Portuguese and culturally Portuguese.
Very Brazilian.
Yeah. I mean, Brazilian. Mm-hmm.
Likes to dance and have barbecues.
Totally. Lots of dancing, lots of barbecues, really touchy-feely.
Very outgoing, which is very opposite of Japan.
Very opposite of Japan. But a lot of them would then be able to come back and work there because of their heritage and stuff.
Right.
So I had no idea about that before I lived there. So anyway, it makes sense that he probably went to Brazil. Maybe there is some family connection there too, but he probably felt way more comfortable there.
Yeah, I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
Kind of like our first episode with Tomiyaki. He couldn't wear clothes for a long time because he just wasn't comfortable. Hiro wasn't comfortable not being in the jungle.
I guess that makes sense. I mean, 30 years is a long time.
Yeah. So he went back. So here's the controversy, though. Or here's the flip side of the coin.
Okay.
So he was kind of greeted as a national war hero in Japan, But before he could even leave the Philippines, he had to be granted a pardon because they had committed so many atrocities in the Philippines over these 30 years. And he wrote a book, Heroo did, and it was a bestseller. It was a big thing, all about his time there and his war. But it's definitely written from his side of the story. And there have been some of the descendants of the Filipino families that they were not so nice to, who have also spoken out and said, no, these guys, this is not, they weren't good dudes. So like I said, they had to be pardoned. So they had killed 30 civilians on the island. And like I said, so it is 50 square miles. Yeah, I wrote it down here, the island.
Okay.
And so they were under this, this command to commit this guerrilla warfare. So it's a small place. They got these 4 Japanese guerrilla warfare soldiers up in the mountains, and the locals, the Filipinos, actually called them the devils of the mountain because they never knew where they were, when they were going to strike, who they were going to strike, why they were going to strike. So there was a guy there. His name was Emilio Viana, and I probably am not saying that right because I don't speak Tagalog, but we'll say it like it's a Spanish name.
Perfect.
But he was just a 52-year-old potato farmer, and he was out working his field with the sons one day, and they sit down for lunch, and while they're sitting there having lunch, all of a sudden shots ring out. He gets hit in the leg. One of his sons gets hit. His other sons grab him, they pull him into the bushes to avoid this random fire because it's just coming out of nowhere. They're not armed. They're not doing anything. So they get him into a boat, try to get him to a different island. But he bleeds out on the boat and dies. So one of his descendants is actually the one she's writing or doing a documentary. Maybe it's out now. I don't know. But about kind of the flip side of these Japanese soldiers on the island. I want to read a little excerpt from a history.net article that talks about this documentary. Quote, although his book, meaning Heroes, gives the impression that he was fighting some type of war against some opposing enemy force, the reality was much different. The people Onoda targeted were local residents he ambushed when they were working, sleeping, eating lunch, walking, or doing ordinary activities in the company of their children or grandchildren. Many were violently slaughtered with knives. Residents lucky enough to survive their wounds after being shot at were often left crippled and rendered unable to perform manual labor to provide for their families. They, the Japanese, were seen as a pest, thieves, and killers. If Onoda and his partners were really fighting a war, it seems to have been a war on innocent civilians. Stalked by hidden executioners, local people lived under a pall of fear. The island was deceptively quiet and peaceful at intervals before something horrible and bloody would happen. The murders were unpredictable, but occurred regularly. Nobody knew who would be next. Not content with slaughtering civilians, the Japanese holdouts also sneaked into people's huts and even the local school to steal items like pots and pans, bags of rice, and other sundry items. Residents were constantly terrified. Nowhere was safe, and they had no recourse from predators who continually victimized them. There was a shadow cast on their lives. They couldn't go out and farm. They couldn't harvest without the fear of being attacked. Children couldn't go out and play at certain times. The value of their land and farmland was essentially reduced. They weren't able to be as productive on their farms without the threat of someone being killed. They were taking their own lives into their hands whenever they ventured out. End quote. And then there's another gentleman in 1964, same kind of thing, went out to work in a rice field, laid down at lunch, take a little nap, and all of a sudden, everyone else, there's this huge commotion. The rice fields are all on fire. By the time everyone gets there, he's been decapitated. They can't hardly even get the body because there's so much fire. Kids are seeing it. Like, it's just brutal. I mean, again, one thing, I guess this sounds so morbid and wrong, it's one thing if you're shooting at the enemy or you're,
Well, that's where I'm like, how did they not notice that these people are just, normal
mutilating people.
And they are normal people that are not the allies. Like, that these people are local. You can tell. So that's the part where I can't understand where they are feeling like they're still doing their mission. Like, at this point, the mission is over. You could I would assume you could, but that's where I'm like, their mental state had to have been.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that it makes me think of. One, obviously mental health.
Yeah.
You say after 30 years. A lot of this wasn't after 30 years.
Right,
a lot
but
of this was after 4 or 5 years or whatever, But
why would you kill someone that's taking a nap in a field? I mean, there's zero threat.
Like an older gentleman.
Yeah, there's zero threat to you. And that's where it's weird. I mean, it is just weird.
But it also goes, to me, it makes me think of, the power of, like he said, shame, the power of nationalism, the power of, pride, the power of...
Like, taken to extreme, though.
Right, but it's a thing that us humans do all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe not on an average day to day, but you see it across history, across the world right now, people doing all sorts of crazy things in the name of whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That if you, from the outside looking in, you're like, well, that isn't seems unconscionable. Like, how could you do that? Or why would you do that? Or, but.
Right. But then, looking back on history.
But there's definitely something in us that makes it very simple to, not simple, that's not the right word, but able to commit all sorts of atrocities in the name of some higher call.
Order,
mission,
mm-hmm.
drive, whatever, be it political, religious, military, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the fortitude is definitely within us. It's hopefully the motive is good as opposed to, maybe not so good.
Yeah. I always like trying to just be nice to people.
I mean, yeah, that's like, be nice.
Be nice. Don't kill people with knives.
Don't start their...
Don't burn their rice fields.
Steal their stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's where I can't understand. And again, I'm not them. Or maybe he needs a psychological evaluation. Like, I don't know how he wouldn't know that these people are just civilians. That's the part I don't get. And no one may ever get that part.
Well, and that's where a lot of the controversy comes from. At some
sure.
point, where do you draw this line between, okay, you're just murdering people now for whatever sick, sadistic reason you have versus you're playing the part of a soldier just following orders.
Right. Yeah. That is strange indeed. Very interesting.
Bizarre.
Like the human psyche.
Yeah.
So, he's obviously still alive?
No, he died.
He died.
But I think just in the teens. Not too long ago.
Not too long ago. And he died in Brazil. Like, he never...
I don't know.
You don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just interesting.
I mean, ultimately, that's where he spent the rest of his life. I don't know how often he came back to Japan
it's just interesting.
But,
well,
it is fascinating. Sad, but really unique, too.
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
I would agree.
So, if you like the episodes, biggest thing I can ask you, please share it with your friends. Obviously, reviews are great, those kind of things, but just get the word out, tell other people. If you want to communicate with us or anything like that, you can email the show at strangestspecies@gmail.com. There is a Facebook page and a Twitter handle out there, all Strangest Species. So look up any of those things. You can get a hold of us that way. If you have an idea for a show, my brother actually sent me a text over something. He said, you should look this up. And it was right up our alley. So
is that our next one?
No, it isn't our next one.
Oh.
It'll come down sometime. It's fun. I have so many ideas. And
well, the human species is very strange. So
yeah, it is.
I feel like you can kind of go.
I've got 2 for next week that I'm like juggling back and forth.
And every week I'm kind of a little bit nervous about what is going to come out of his mouth, but it's kind of exciting too.
Yeah.
Kind of this
so one
thrill.
thing you'll find out about us over time, maybe. Ethie and I are polar opposites when it comes to, I like things dark, macabre, creepy, unusual. She likes things right down the middle, vanilla, simple.
I love chocolate.
Well, she does love chocolate. I like vanilla. But she likes just happy, simple things. And so some of the topics will be a little more dark. And one of them next week that I'm tossing about will be the first one. Maybe that's a little more on the...
Scary? Like legit scary?
Not scary like paranormal or anything like that, but one where you might be like, "Ooh, I don't like how that makes me feel."
Well, I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. So everyone have a great night. Have a great 4th of July. And we will talk to you guys next week. Out.